There we go. Um, so we're starting out today looking at Parshat Mishpatim, which is the second. It's in Exodus after we get the Ten Commandments. Moses goes on talking. So this is Exodus 21. Right, like on Mount Sinai, we got well on the ten command on the stone tablets we got how many? We got 10 commandments, but in the whole Torah, how many commandments do we have?
613.
Oh, I
613.
didn't hear.
Yes, 613. This is a classic number. They say it breaks down to 365 for right 365 negative prohibitions, negative commandments. So there's 365 things we're not allowed to do, and there's 248 things we are supposed to do, mitzvot. The 248 they also say is the number of limbs in our body. Now, obviously, no one's ever really said, okay, here are the number of limbs in the body. But so the 248 positive commandments, they say every limb in your body has a mitzvah it really wants to do. And every day of the week screams out, oh, don't do that sin on me. So that's the number 613. So we're in Exodus. Moses just went up to Mount Sinai. He got the 10 commandments. And now he gets a lot more commandments. Um, by the way, they used to actually, we read the Shema twice a day. And how many paragraphs does the Shema have? Do we know?
Oui?
3 paragraphs. The Shema and V'ahavta is 1 paragraph, right? You shall love. And if you listen, that's considered a second paragraph, parsha portion. And the third paragraph is when it says, God said to Moses, put tzitzit on your garments. So those are the 3 paragraphs of the Shema that we say twice a day. They used to say the 10 commandments as well. They used to do essentially 4 paragraphs. Any guesses why they stopped doing the 10 commandments?
I actually just read that, so I'm gonna let other people guess first.
What would you,
What
why,
would you, why,
any guesses why
any
why
guess?
it would be a bad idea to read the 10 commandments?
Why would it be a bad idea to read them?
Yeah, they used to read them every day and then they stopped it. They got rid of them. So think about it this way. How many commandments do the Christians ever talk about?
Maybe 3.
Well, but the Christians love the 10 commandments, right?
Oh,
Here in America, they're trying to put them up in the schools, right? You don't see them putting up signs in the schools saying, don't have intercourse when your wife is in nida. They don't put up big signs in the schools saying you're not allowed to eat pork, right? So they limit it. They kind of cut the Torah down to 10 commandments, right? So we didn't want to give people the impression that there's only 10 commandments. So that's why they stopped reading the 10 commandments, actually. So these are some of the rest of the commandments. And a lot of mishpatim has to do with constructing a society that, like a decent society. A lot of these are just basic social laws. So we have in Exodus 21 the goring ox. This is if a ox. There's a difference in the rules between an ox that's I didn't know it was in the habit of goring. I had no idea this was a vicious ox. So the ox is stoned. The owner of the ox is not punished. If I have a ox in the habit of goring, the ox shall be stoned and its owner shall be put to death. So why is the owner put to death?
This year was careless.
Yeah, so they were careless and it caused a death. Um, right, so this is like manslaughter. Um, but then it goes on to say, if a ransom is redeemed, whatever is imposed must be paid. Um, so it's Rashi says it's the law regarding him, the court should set on him a ransom. So in fact, he doesn't get put to death, but he gets punished. If it gores a minor, male or female, he shall be dealt with the same rule. Okay, let me go to the pit. So there's four categories of damages in the Torah. They talk about in the Talmud. It's the ox, which is I have this vicious animal that maybe that I should have protected more. And then the pit is when I cause um, I have a dangerous situation on my house. When someone opens a pit or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or donkey falls in, the one responsible must pay restitution. So what would be a pit nowadays? If my kid leaves their bicycle on the sidewalk and someone trips over it, is that similar to opening a pit, digging a pit and not covering it?
No. The
Why not?
bicycle.
Yeah, they
Does the
left they left a
bicycle
bicycle. What's that?
the bicycle is not like means by like danger for death. No?
That's true. That's true. It's not going to come. Well, if they're old, they could die. Right? A pit too. I don't know how deep the pit is, but like the pit if they're an old person, they could hurt themselves. But my point is, this is that when it's a pit, it's not only literally a pit. It's anything that just kind of stays there and can injure without moving. That's my point. So anything like that is considered a pit. There's a different amount of responsibility for different damages, but that's called a pit. Um, I'm skipping more about the ox. Um, the other damages, we'll get to it. There's the fire, which is if I light a fire on my property and then it goes and spreads to my neighbor's property. The Talmud says if it's not an unusual wind, it's just a normal day and the fire spreads, I'm responsible. Um, and so, in other words, anything I do that could be expected to go out and cause harm to someone else, that's considered the pit. I'm sorry, that's considered a type of fire. So, an example I heard recently was, let's say I post some type of mean thing online about somebody, or I post a negative review about a restaurant, or any of those things that I post online. In a certain sense, those go out and harm. And so that's similar to a fire. Um, okay, so okay, now we have the law of the thief. Okay. Oh, here's the fire. So first of all, the livestock. I said there was the foal, the ox. The third category is my livestock that goes and eats your stuff, and the fourth category is the fire. And so there's a whole Talmudic tractate about, do we take different types of damages? Do we categorize them as which type of damage? How much does a person owe? Okay. Another category of law here is called the shomrim, the guardians. So this has to do with if I have your property and it gets damaged, I didn't damage it myself. How much am I responsible? So we have um, when one person gives money or goods to another for safekeeping, if the thief is not caught, the owner of the house shall depose before God, swear to God and didn't do it, and deny laying hands on the other property. So if I give you something for safekeeping, you're what's called in Hebrew shomer, you're not really responsible. You just have to swear. Um, this here and this okay. So that was the shomer chinam. I haven't paid you for it. Um, there is let's see. Um, there's a person who borrows it. If I borrow it from you, um, restitution must be made. Um, so if I borrow something from you, I have to pay for it. If you give it to me for free, I don't have to pay for it. There's also rules about a renter, about a I think the fourth category. Um, okay, you shall not tolerate a sorceress or witch. What do you think constitutes a witch? Like if someone today says, "Oh yeah, I practice, I'm Wiccan, I'm a witch," are they halachically a witch? What do you think?
Mhm.
I remember that you mentioned that if they're praying to one thing, so it's not idolatry. So
Well,
maybe
it's not even saying, right? It's maybe it's that idolatry, right? It's not clear
mm,
what exactly is this person doing,
yeah.
right? So, um, and everyone's clear. Okay, it's the death penalty,
Definitely.
but
But
it's yeah. Go ahead, David. You were saying something.
What is it?
Were you saying something?
No.
Okay. So, um, what I think what some people say is it's people who are tricking other people, or what some people say is they're using the names of other gods to actually accomplish magic. But in any event, people nowadays who call themselves witches are not halachically witches. So contemporary Wicca is actually not necessarily it. Um, whoever lies with animals, who have prohibition of bestiality. Um, okay, you shall not oppress a stranger. You shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you are strange in the land of Egypt. You shall not ill-treat any widow or orphan. If you mistreat them, I'll heed their outcry as soon as they cry out to me. What do all these people have in common?
Yeah,
A stranger.
vulnerable.
Yeah, this has to do with protecting vulnerable people. Yeah, right. I will heed their outcry as soon as they cry out to me. But God hears the cry of the vulnerable people first. Um, so recognizing we're all in different countries, who are the vulnerable people that you think of nowadays?
Immigrants, homeless people,
I
people who
was
are very
reading,
low on the
yeah,
socioeconomic level.
I was listening to an amazing and upsetting podcast on the New York Times yesterday. It's their daily, and they're talking about how Epstein um, got these European women to do his bidding. And basically, you had these poor European women who were being manipulated because they were pretty desperate, right? So he was like promising to get them in touch with various modeling agencies or with various important, powerful people, and they were desperate. So that's, one form of powerlessness is being obviously powerless, right? Like obviously children are powerless. Obviously, um, immigrants too, by the way. When we talk about a stranger, what do you think this category of stranger means? What was our status in the land of Egypt?
Stranger is like foreigner, somebody from the foreign land.
So someone from a foreign land. So here in America, right, that would seem to be immigrants. Um, right? So we have a special mitzvah not to ill-treat immigrants, which, I got to say is not being observed. I don't feel like it's being observed nowadays, but yeah. Okay. Lending money. This parsha, as I said, has so many mitzvot. It's a ton of stuff. If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, do not act towards them as a creditor, exact no interest from them. So in other words, we're not allowed to charge interest to Jews. We are allowed to charge interest to non-Jews, and the Christians also had a rule that they weren't allowed to charge interest. So this is why Jews became the lenders and the bankers, because we're allowed to charge interest to other non-Jews. Why do you think the Torah wants people not to charge interest?
So you don't take advantage of the people that is next to you?
Okay, so there's an idea of a free loan, right? I think what Moses has in mind here is a free loan, right? Is that if you need to start business, that for me to give you money and take money from you is kind of taking advantage of you, right? That if you want to start a business and you don't have the money for it, and I have $1 million, and I give you the $1 million, but I take money for it, I'm kind of taking advantage of the fact that you have less than me. So what I'm supposed to do is just give you a free loan. Um, Historically, by the way, it didn't work out so well. So they invented a way for the Beit Din, for the court, to take over the debt. So now instead of owing to me, you owe it to the court. So unfortunately, it was this vision that didn't really work out so well. So there's a couple of, this gets extended in the Talmud. Let's say I give you, you need some eggs. So I give you a dozen eggs, and then you come back and you give me 2 dozen. Is that interest?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Maybe it's a way of showing thanks,
Well, so
appreciate
okay,
it.
so David, you're saying so Liliana, you're saying maybe it's a way of thanks. David, is that what you were thinking too?
Yeah, I think it's
So
like
right, so it's a
appreciation.
gift. You're saying it's a gift. It's a gift, right? It's a sign
I
of my
think it's
appreciation.
interest.
It's a gift. What's that, Saskia?
I think it's interest
So why are you saying it's interest?
because it's obviously interest. Just because it's not money doesn't mean it's interest because it's the same thing, but it's more. So in my definition, that would constitute interest.
What if the person said, you have to give me back, I'll give you a dozen, but I want you to give me back 2 dozen. Is that interest?
That would be interest, yes.
Okay.
If the
So
person that is giving requests, but
so
if you give
halachically,
not willing to give,
right?
shouldn't be.
Halachically, in general, it is considered interest, even if I didn't ask for it, right? I didn't ask you for it, but you're giving me more than I gave you. So it's considered interest. There is some, there's a debate about, well, let's say I give you 11 eggs, right? And you go to the store, you get a dozen eggs. I give you my carton of eggs. It's missing one. It's 11 eggs. You go to the store, you get a dozen eggs, and you give me the carton. So there's some debate over whether that's considered interest. Because some people say, look, you're not giving me what I gave you. And some people say, look, you're not really keeping track. You gave me a carton. I gave you a box of eggs. You gave me a box of eggs. But it's actually a very strict rule. And there's a lot of discussion about all those extensions of it. Anytime I get back from you more than I gave to you. There was even a discussion, which I thought was a little silly. Let's say, how did this work? Let's say I lend you money to publish your book. You pay me back, but then in the cover of your book, you write down, with gratitude to Rabbi David for lending me the money. Am I getting more than I gave you?
Depends if you still get like the money for the book.
I
So
got
yeah,
back the money. I got back the money. So you think yeah? Okay. Anybody think no? So there are opinions that say he's not allowed to do it, but then most people say, no, he's just thanking him. It's not like you're not giving me something that's worth money. You're just thanking me. It's derech eretz. It's what polite people do. Polite people thank other people. But my point is, it is actually a very strict prohibition. Okay. So this is also really talking about lending money to poor people. If you take your neighbor's garment in pledge, do you know what they mean by pledge? So it means I lend you money, and it's like a pawn shop, right? So I lend you money, but you give me your jacket. So I have to give it to you before the sun sets. I'm not allowed to keep your jacket. Right. I'm also not allowed to take your workman's tools, anything you would rely on. I'm not allowed to take. So the idea is I'm lending you money for free. I'm not taking anything that really, makes you uncomfortable, makes you suffer. Right. That the lender doesn't do anything that hurts the borrower. Okay. Last verse of 22. You shall be holy to me. You must not eat flesh torn by beasts in the field. You shall cast it to the dogs. And the word for torn, by the way, is treifa. Have you ever heard the term treif? When have you heard the term treif, Saskia?
Something's not kosher.
Yeah. So treif is used for anything not kosher. Literally, it means something that's been it's roadkill nowadays, right? Torn by the beasts in the field. You just find an animal out there torn by beasts. This is one of the rules behind kashrut. So one of the things about kashrut is it's not only that we have certain animals that we don't eat, pigs and snails and frogs and whatnot, but it has to be killed in a certain way. So anything that's not killed, not shechted, not killed in a kosher way, is considered treif. This is one of the rules that is the origins of what makes something kosher. By the way, you cast it to the dogs. Why do the dogs get the meat, other than that they're such great animals? Why not the cats? You might not know this.
because they're
Saskia, do you know this? What?
because they are the pets.
So it's not because they're the pets.
I
So,
didn't hear you that well. Sorry, I didn't get the
why
question.
did the dogs get? Why do the dogs get this non-kosher meat?
Oh, yeah,
Do you remember this?
because
See,
they warned the Jews at some stage. There was
close.
something positive they did, and that's why they get the
They were
meat, but
good
I
dogs.
don't
They
remember
were
what they
good,
did.
very good dogs. So on the 10th plague, the plague of the death of the firstborn, what did the dogs do or not do? Hint, hint.
They didn't bark, and yeah, they didn't tell the Egyptians about the Israelites
Yeah.
fleeing, and that's why they get the meat as a reward.
Well, I don't know if it was right. It was at night. The Jews left in the morning. So, but they didn't bark.
But I think it was still dark, and the dogs didn't bark or something like that. At least
Yeah.
that's what I read.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Not a dog wagged its tail, wagged its tongue. Yes, they didn't bark. Okay. Um, okay, you must not carry false rumors. We're going to get a lot more into the law of lashon hara, of forbidden speech. But basically, there is a rule, lashon hara. Lashon means tongue, ra means evil, and it's generally any negative speech. Um, right here, it doesn't even. Um, right, how when it says you shall not carry false rumors, if you think about it, um, how do you know if you hear a rumor? How do you know if it's true? How do you evaluate if it's true or false? Like my son came home and he said he heard that his teacher is being fired. His math teacher, who he doesn't like, is being fired. That's what he heard. So, how is he supposed to evaluate if that is true or not?
The rumor cannot be true because he didn't see that happening. He
Yeah,
just
what did
heard
he
it.
see? What did he see? He's
Yeah.
heard some other kid. He's heard some other seventh grader say, "Oh, I heard this guy's getting fired." And so now he's saying, "Oh, I heard this guy's getting fired." He doesn't know anything. Yes. So there are rules where, right, with a witness, there's witnesses have to see it firsthand. There have to be two witnesses, and they have to be sure of what they saw. There were no, this hasn't even happened yet. So like, what is it that his friends actually saw? Probably very little. David or Liliana, were you guys unmuting? Did you have something to say? So basically, anytime we hear something, we can't assume it's true unless like there's really like two witnesses, they saw it firsthand. It's, the kind of laws of evidence. Otherwise, generally speaking, we have to reject it as false. Okay. You shall not side with the mighty to do wrong. Right? Don't join with a crowd that's doing wrong. You shall not give perverse testimony in a dispute so as to pervert in favor of the mighty, nor shall you show deference to a poor person in a dispute. There are a lot of famous stories about rabbis when they're judging cases. They would make sure everybody either you're standing or sitting. One person can't stand, one can't sit. They have to make sure everybody's wearing equally nice clothing. So there's stories about these disputes where like they'll say, okay, both of you show up wearing, they have this, they'll lend them clothing. Both of you show up wearing nice clothes. Okay. When you encounter your enemy's ox or donkey wandering, you must take it back. So this is a law called Hashavat Avedah, returning a lost item. Elsewhere we have returning property, but here also we have an ox, right? The law is that we have to return whatever it is they've lost. It's odd that it talks about the enemy, by the way. Um, so I don't want to get into well, the Talmud says the enemy, by the way, given what I said about Lashon Hara and what we can't believe, why would I have an enemy? And it also says, like, Lo tisnad achicha bilvavecha, don't hate your brother in your heart. So why would you have an enemy?
You're still allowed to, I mean, it's not forbidden to have enemies if somebody, for example, killed somebody from your family.
Okay, good. So what the Talmud says, what the Talmud says is this is someone who you know did something bad, right? So yeah, someone killed someone from your family and you weren't able to convict them, you're allowed to hate them. I think the more literal reading of this is actually just, okay, yeah, you're not supposed to have enemies for no good reason, sinat chinam, but what do you do about that? Right? What do I do so sina is hatred, chinam is free or baseless. So sinat chinam is hatred for no good reason. So what if I like really, what if I have baseless hatred? So then, I do them favors. I bring their donkey back. I help them raise up their donkey. Um, I, I help them in those ways. Right. So I'm supposed to, or maybe just I'm fighting my urge to have them as to not help their donkey. I fight that urge by doing the right thing. By the way, I think a lot of times when we have enemies, I don't know if it's a lot of times, but sometimes when we have enemies, it's because we haven't handled the situation right. So, um, yeah, I don't want to say too much more about that. Okay. You shall not subvert the rights of the needy in their dispute. Um, so in other words, when judges have to judge whether they're poor or rich, they have to judge fairly. Um, I've heard the claim, although I think it's what I heard was wrong. But there was a lawsuit against McDonald's by this woman who got coffee spilled on herself, and the jury gave $1 million for spilling hot coffee on herself. I've heard the argument, which I think now Ben told me this is wrong. But I heard the argument that the jury just felt bad for this lady, and they're like, "Oh, we feel bad for her, and this is this big company, just give her some money." The truth might be more complicated. Maybe she really was very badly damaged. But the idea is, even if someone's poor, we don't subvert justice for them. Um, I don't like keep this translation. Let me change translations. Well, keep very far from a false charge. Keep very far from falsehood. So in general, we're not allowed to lie. There are certain times in Judaism when they say we're allowed to alter the truth or change the truth. Does anybody know some of those examples? When can you lie in Judaism? Do I know? Saskia.
In order not to hurt somebody's feelings, for example.
Okay. Um,
In
so
certain circumstances, not
what,
always, but like, for example, if I hear a rumor about somebody and that person about the rumor is spoken asks me that that person speak badly about me, and I
yeah.
know that that information will hurt the person, I'm allowed to lie and say no.
So it's not just because it would hurt their feelings, right? It's because you would then be causing them to dislike that third person. So you can
And I would be
lie.
spreading the rumor on, right? That would be the
Well,
other
it's a little different
problem.
than rumor, but yeah, you're causing them
Mm.
to not like that other person. David, were you saying something? What if you go to a wedding and you see this bride and she is just ugly? And what do you say? She's just ugly. Like she's just like she looks like a fraud.
Maybe you can focus on the good and compliment the dress or maybe the hairstyle. Like
Okay.
maybe it's better not to mention anything about something you dislike, but
So
instead you can say something good.
so it's a dispute in the Talmud. Beit Shammai would do exactly what you did. Look at Beit Shammai would say, "Wow, what a nice dress," or what a nice person, or something. Beit Hillel says, "Nope, uh, she's a beautiful and lovely bride. Every bride is beautiful." Now, maybe why would Hillel? By the way, we always follow Hillel, right? Hillel and Shammai classically were always arguing in the Talmud. We always follow Hillel. So why would I say? Am I lying when I say she's a beautiful bride? What? Why?
Because beauty is always in the eye of the
Right.
beholder. And I
So
mean, I'm
maybe I
sure to her
mean she,
husband, but to her husband, she's beautiful. Otherwise, he wouldn't marry her.
right. So maybe I mean in my mind, well, she's beautiful to him. Okay, she's a beautiful bride. Um, and the other thing, and the reason, what's the reasoning for other than okay, I don't want to rain on the parade, right? Right. So if I didn't say she's a beautiful bride, it's like, what am I accomplishing? Right? We moved into our house 2.5 years ago, and like I had a relative who came in and sat down. They're like, oh, this is wrong. That's wrong. Oh, did you see this? It's like, what are you accomplishing? We just bought this house, right? Somebody walks in with a piece of clothing that's not, it can't be returned. Are you going to say, shouldn't have gotten it? What? That's terrible. I can't believe you got that, right? Because what are you accomplishing? You're just making them feel bad. There's no, right, you can't accomplish anything with it. The other thing is for the sake of peace. Um, so the classic example is that um, when God goes and tells Sarah at age 99 that she's going to get pregnant, she laughs and says, "Oh, my husband's so old. You think I'm going to have a kid?" And then when God talks to Abraham, God says, "Oh, this Sarah laughed and she said, I'm old." Right? She didn't say God said that Sarah thought she was old, not that Sarah. So he changed he says he changed the truth, right? He differed from the truth to protect the peace of the couple. So protecting Shalom Bayit, the peace of the home, is also another reason for distorting the truth. Okay. Do not take bribes. Um, there's a What forms can bribes take? So obviously money. What other forms?
Lots of forms. I mean, also other advantages for you, for your family members, for
Advantages for
not only
you?
for money, but also for better job, for housing, I mean, can be
Yeah. So
anything.
um,
What means bribes?
a bribe is when I'm a judge or a government person, and you give me money so that I make a decision that you want. So let's say
Oh,
Oh,
let's say you're a power company and your plant is really terrible and dirty and polluting. I'm going to shut you down. You visit me, you give me $1 million. I don't shut down your power company. That's a bribe.
yeah, like corruption, kind of.
It's corruption. Yeah. So an example nowadays in the news is this Melania movie. Apparently, they paid $40 million for, even though it probably was worth much, much less than that. Right. So they're not necessarily giving money and saying, okay, I want this particular piece of legislation, but they're trying to get, when Saudi Arabia came and left a gold bar on Donald Trump's desk, right? It's not literally a bribe, right? It's not literally I'm paying you and I want this, but in halacha we say anytime someone has business before you, you can't take anything from them. So there's an example from the Talmud. A rabbi is going into the Beit Din. Somebody he doesn't know opens the door for him. Thank you. He walks in. And then that person turns out is one of the people that he's seeing at the court. He says, I'm sorry, I can't do your case. You opened the door for me. You did me a favor. Right? Anytime someone's given me a gift, bribes blind the clear-sighted. So it's not just, okay, I want money for doing it. It's if anytime I receive money from someone I'm making a powerful decision about, that's considered a bribe. Um, let me see what time. Okay. You shall not oppress a stranger. This gets repeated like 36 or 39 different times in Deuteronomy. They're very concerned about strangers. 6 years shall you sow your land and gather in its yield. How many people have heard of the sabbatical year? Shemitah. So there's something called a Shemitah year. Every seventh year in the land of Israel, you plant and have your field grow for 6 years, and the 7th year the field rests. That's called the Shemitah year. Um, there's some farms in Israel that actually do this. There's a story about a kibbutz where like they were the only kibbutz that observed the Shemitah year, and so they waited to plant their crops till the year was over, and then this disease came and wiped out all the crops, but their crop was fine because it was later. But I don't know if it's true, but there are places that do this. The kibbutz I was on, it's kind of a weird solution. They sell their kibbutz to Arabs for the 7th year, so it's not technically their land they're planting. But the very Orthodox kibbutzim actually still do this. They don't plant in the 7th year. And then that 7th year, the farmers are supposed to spend the time studying Torah and having like a break from farming. Okay, we have the mitzvot of the 3 festivals. In biblical times, during these festivals, people would come to the temple to offer their sacrifice. So on the week-long festivals, Pesach and Sukkot, they'd actually come to Jerusalem and celebrate the week-long festival in Jerusalem, right? Which says, "None shall appear before me empty-handed." So this thing about appearing before me is what they do on the festival. They come to the temple and they appear before God. So the 3 festivals, it says 3 times a year. The Feast of Unleavened Bread, what do we call that festival?
Pesach.
That's Pesach, Passover. By the way, right, the month of Aviv has to be in the spring. So the Jewish calendar always is set so that Pesach is in the spring. The Feast of the Harvest. Does anybody know what the Feast of the Harvest is?
What?
So
Shavuot?
I think this is. I'm like now. I'm hopefully I'm getting this right. I think it's Sukkot, and I think this is Shavuot. I
Oh,
think. I hope I'm right.
Yes.
Somebody's nodding. Like, am I right there, or you?
Yeah, you're
Yeah. Okay. So, and then it says 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before your sovereign, the God. So, in other words, they would go down personally to the temple, all the Jewish men. Okay, the first fruits of your soil. So this is the first fruit to come on a tree, gets brought to the temple. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Okay, so one of the laws of kashrut is separating dairy and milk. Dairy and meat. What sort of meat do we need to separate? Do you know?
Mother's meat from the child's,
So
like for
it
example, chicken, small
so
chicken.
right, so chickens don't have milk. So biblically, chickens are not considered meat and milk. Biblically.
Oh,
So there's what's kind of the Bible, the Torah commands, and then there's rabbinic, what the rabbis add. So the Torah says a kid in its mother's milk. We take it to mean mammals, right? Cows, goats, sheep, any these animals that have milk. In the Talmud, they say, you know what, chickens will be considered milk as well. That's considered a rabbinic law, um, but it's still right. We don't combine chicken and milk either. Um, is it only boiling?
no.
So
You're not
this
supposed to cook, to eat, or to benefit from the
good,
mixture.
good. Saskia, I feel like you've been in my class a long time because you know that's great. I love it. It's fine. Um, so this verse appears 3 times in the Torah, right? So the one time, so I'll tell you a joke and then I'll tell you. Okay, so Moshe goes up to heaven and God says to Moshe, "Don't boil a kid in its mother's milk." And Moshe says, "Oh, okay, so you mean we're not supposed to cook meat and milk?" And God says to Moshe, "Don't boil a kid in its mother's milk." And Moshe says, "Oh, so we're not supposed to have milk and meat at the same meal?" And God says to Moshe, "Don't boil a kid in its mother's milk." And Moshe says to God, "Oh, you mean so we're supposed to have like separate plates and forks and stuff?" And God says, "Fine, have it your way." So that's a joke. But um, it's repeated 3 times. So we have this assumption that we make when we interpret Torah that there's no extra verse, that every verse comes to teach us something. So if it says it 3 times, each one has to tell us a new thing. So the first time is for cooking, any combination of meat and milk. The second time is for eating any combination of meat and milk. And so after milk, we have to clean our mouth and we can eat meat unless it's hard cheese. After meat, we actually have to wait some number of hours. Some people wait more, some less, but after meat, we wait. So we can't really have them at the same meal. Um, and then the third one is what Saskia mentioned is not benefiting. So there's an idea in halacha called hana'ah, which means benefit. I can't sell a cheeseburger. I can sell pork, not to a Jew, to a non-Jew. I can sell pork. I could open up a pork bacon, right? I could even open a hamburger with bacon stand, but not cheese, because it's a special limitation on certain things. Okay, is that clear on meat and milk? By the way, I said you can't eat them together. Why do people have separate dishes, including myself? But why do people have separate dishes? Do you know?
Can hit before, no?
What's
Yeah.
that?
Because taste is absorbed through heat, and if it's porous material like earthenware or porcelain, you assume that it absorbs the taste and it will also expel the taste again.
Yeah. So let's say, right, at dinner, I fry up some meat in my frying pan. The next morning, if I make eggs in that frying pan, cast iron frying pan, they've got pores. If I fry some eggs in there, it's going to taste like the meat, so it absorbs flavor. So that's why we have separate dishes and pots and pans. Um, Reb Zalman in the renewal movement argued that we don't really need it because we have dishwashers and really good detergent. Um, and it's a good point that no one really follows. But I mean, no, there's very few people who are observant but follow Reb Zalman's opinion. But I think it's an interesting opinion anyway. David, was there something you were saying that you didn't get a chance to say?
No, I just say that yeah, kind of like when you use dairy dishes, they're gonna still have the flavor of dairy and meat as well.
Right, right. Um,
I have a question on how
yeah,
it works when you eat dairy before and after you eat when you eat meat before or dairy before, how is it?
you and why are you allowed to do
Like
that? So
yes, I
you
heard
can
that
have
you
milk.
can eat
Yeah,
uh-huh.
you can have milk and then brush your teeth and then eat meat. Now
After how long? I have to wait for some
there's no
time?
delay. No, there's no delay.
Oh, okay.
After hard cheese, there's a delay, but milk is fine. Um, I don't really know why. I just know that that is what they say. And if you look at Abraham serving the 3 guests, when Abraham has the angels visit him, what does he serve them?
I think meat and cakes and something else.
Hold on, let's see. It says it's 18. So, okay. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the trees of Mamre while he was standing at the entrance to the tent of the heat of the day, sitting at the tent of the heat of the day. Abraham looked up, he saw 3 men nearby. We're going to find other angels. Um, Abraham hurried to the tent. He says, quick, get 3 seahs of the finest flour, need it to bake some bread. He's going to serve them some bread. Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf he had prepared. Um, so is it surprising that he's eating? So he's eating meat and milk. He's serving meat and milk. God, why is he doing that? Do you guys see how he's serving meat and milk? Now,
First sight, yes, but is that, I mean, the question is the timing. Was that when they already received the laws of kashrut, or is
oh
that
no,
before?
no, no. This is like I don't know what that something like 1,000 years before. Maybe not 1,000, but like hundreds of years before the Torah has been given.
So
But
he
there
doesn't
is
know.
there's a Talmudic tradition that Abraham observed the Torah.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
we're gonna go with the Midrash. We're gonna go with the Talmud and Midrash, and we're gonna say, okay, Abraham observed Torah. And by the way, there's a beautiful explanation I heard about how did he know about the Torah. So you remember earlier I said we have 248 limbs corresponding to 248 mitzvot. So there's a Hasidic drash that he looked at his limbs, he looked at himself, and he said, what would I need to do to make myself holy? Right? I look at my arm, what does my right hand need to do to become holy? Oh, it needs to give charity. What does my eye need to do to be holy? Oh, it needs to give the benefit of the doubt. Um, and he figured out the entire Torah based purely on looking at his own body and how he could make it sacred, and looking at the days of the week and days of the year and how he could make them sacred. Um, I mean, it's a bit much to claim that he observed the whole Torah. And there's even a yeshiva, Saskia, in the Midrash. Like um, when after Isaac is almost sacrificed on Mount Moriah, he disappears for um, I forget how many years, but he disappears for some time. So where did he go? He went to yeshiva. So the Midrash says that there's this yeshiva of Shem and Ever. So what were they studying? Like, so they in their imagination, like these guys have some form of Torah. Um, so right, so he's serving the milk before the meat. Um, we'll do an. Oh, did we already do it? Yeah. Any other questions about milk and meat? Uh, Sorry, let me just pull up my notes. Okay, so I asked you guys to read. Sorry, I'm just organizing my desktop here. I asked you guys to read the chapter on bar and bat mitzvah in Greenberg, chapter 12. Um, so the halachic origin of the bar mitzvah is from the Talmud. So let's look at that and then okay. So the Talmud is actually in this discussion about honoring your parents. And they have very extreme examples of honoring your parents. They have this rabbi who, when his mother was elderly, she had a hard time getting into bed, he would crouch down on the ground and she'd climb on top of his back like stairs. And then when her shoe broke and she was going for a walk in the garden, he got down on the ground and put his hands under her feet so she could walk along. And then they're like, oh, there's this guy Dama, and he's like the best example of, um, he's the best example of honoring parents. Um, right? Dama, the Kohanim came to him to get something for the temple, and it was under his father's pillow, and so he couldn't get it. He said, "I don't want to wake up my dad." So, he honored his parents by not waking them up, even for a huge amount of money. So then they say, Rabbi, and then Dama gets rewarded. So after he doesn't wake up his dad to give the Kohanim this thing they need for the temple, the next year he gets a red heifer, red cow, that's worth even more money. So then the Talmud says, if this is true of one who's not commanded, but performs a mitzvah, all the more so one who's commanded and performs a mitzvah. In other words, if there's a reward for someone who does a mitzvah without a command, all the more so as someone who's commanded, is there a huge reward for them. In other words, we can expect a huge reward for mitzvot if we're commanded. As Rabbi Hanina says, greater is one who's commanded to do a mitzvah and performs it than one who's not commanded and performs it. In other words, um, is it better if do you get more mitzvah points if I'm trying to think of an example that's not me and my children. Who's greater? If I tell my kid to clean up and he cleans up, or my kid just cleans up without me telling them.
Without telling.
So intuitively, you would think without telling them, right?
Yeah.
Intuitively, that's what you would think. So it's kind of a weird teaching because it's saying that, okay, there's Jews that God is always telling to clean up, and the rest of the world, God's not really telling them what to do. And it's saying the Jews that God is telling to clean up, our reward when we clean up is higher than the non-Jews. Because God doesn't really expect it of them. Like, okay, you good, you honored your parents, great. But like a Jew, like I really expect it of you, and so I'm really honoring you, really, really rewarding you. Um, it's a little counterintuitive, right? Because um, you'd think like, okay, if I keep kosher as a non-Jew, that's really serving Hashem, right? If I keep kosher as a Jew, well, I'm supposed to, whatever. But as a non-Jew, it's really, and saying no. That's Rabbi Chania. Rabbi Yosef, who was blind. Now, by the way, there's a kind of upsetting rule in the Talmud that a blind person is exempt from mitzvot. Probably in ancient times, blind people couldn't communicate. I'm not sure why blind people are exempt from mitzvot, but that's how it was. He said, at first, if at first I would say, if someone would tell me that halacha is in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda, I would make a festival day for the who says a blind person is exempt from fulfilling mitzvot. I'd make a festival day for the rabbis as I am not commanded and yet I perform. Right? So at first I heard Rabbi Yehuda. He said, I'm not exempt for them. I'm exempt. Um, and he said, I really want to be exempt. Right? Because I'm going to be so dedicated that I'm exempt, but I do it anyway. Now I've heard what Rabbi Hanina said. Greater is the one who's commanded to do a mitzvah and performs it than one who's not commanded to do a mitzvah and performs it. On the contrary, if someone would tell me the halacha is not in accordance with the barechu, I would make a festive day. Why would he make a festive day if someone could tell him that halacha is not in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda?
Because it's a pleasure to do mitzvot. So if the blind person can mitzvot, it's actually a reason to celebrate, right?
Not exactly, right? Now that I've heard what Rabbi Chanina said, that I get more of a reward if I'm commanded, what do I want the halacha to be?
Obligatory.
Yeah, I want to be commanded. I want my dad to tell me to clean up my room, because then I get a bigger reward. So I would make a festive day for being required to do mitzvot. So this is what a bat mitzvah is. A bar mitzvah is a festival. Do you mind if I say bar mitzvah and I mean bar or bat? Can we do that? So a bar mitzvah is a festival for when a child is required to do mitzvot. Up until the age of 12 for girls and 13 for boys, they're not considered responsible for their behavior. Right? It's, God, they're not expected to live up to anything. My daughter, children hit other children all the time, right? And they're not sent to jail. So this is the age of essentially legal responsibility. And we're throwing a party because now that they're legally responsible, they can get rewarded for doing it. Does that make sense? So the bar mitzvah is not, it really is about the party. It's not about Torah reading. It's not about like, okay, you have to learn. Nowadays, it's become traditional that children learn to read the Torah portion, they learn to read the Haftorah. Um, it's really not obligatory. So I've had children who really it's too much for them. I'm like, you can say the Shema and give a talk. It doesn't have to be that. Traditionally, since okay, so in traditional Orthodox society, um, the day that a boy turns 13, since he's now old enough to be responsible, he's old enough to lead the davening. And that's why, right? Because there's this idea that if if I'm obligated and you're not, you can't do it for me. So that's why traditionally boys they'd lead the davening that day. Um, and also the reason they have an aliyah is because theoretically the person going up to the Torah and reading it is reading it for the rest of us. They're doing that mitzvah for the rest of us. So that's why the Torah reading is connected to the bar mitzvah. Um, there's a lot of other stuff that's come around. So in Orthodoxy now it's evolved and girls give a Devar Torah. In Reform and Conservative, I've seen them doing a lot of aliyot and honors for relatives, big party at night, which perhaps is actually, exactly what that rabbi wanted. But technically, you don't need it. You guys converting, right? You don't need a bar mitzvah because your conversion is your bar mitzvah, right? That's exactly what conversion is, right? Conversion is saying, I'm choosing to become obligated in the mitzvah. That's what conversion is. Um, but it is a great opportunity to read Torah. So, any other questions or comments about our about mitzvah?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you already discussed it before, but I would like to ask, why is it for girls at 12 and for
Uh,
boys at 13?
um, so probably historically, girls mature faster. Physically, they mature faster, right? They look like adult. They look like little women quicker than boys do, right? They hit puberty faster than boys do. They say spiritually that we become bar mitzvah when we receive all of our soul. So when we're born, we receive our body and we receive our yetzer hara, our evil inclination, um, but we don't fully receive our good inclination. And it takes 12 years to fully draw down that good inclination from heaven. I need just a quick break to refill my water. You guys, I'll be right back. By the way, so the word bar mitzvah. So what does mitzvah mean?
Commandment.
So mitzvah means commandment. And what does bar or bat mean? Bar is is an ancient, I think, Aramaic form of ben. So what is bar?
Daughter.
Yes, son or daughter, but it's also used to mean member of a group. So, for instance, have you ever heard of B'nai B'rith? You guys ever heard of the community service group B'nai B'rith? There's a community service group, B'nai B'rith. So it means children or members of the covenant. So bar mitzvah means member of the commandments. I'm a member of the group that's commanded. Um, okay. So Talishkin chapters 26 and 27 was all about anger. Um, Anger is considered extremely bad. So there's two things that. So Maimonides says that and most things we should be like somewhere in the middle, most attributes in the middle, but that there's two attributes we should really pull to the extreme. One of them is humility. We should be very humble, and one of them is anger. We should be hard to anger, easy to appease. Um, Obviously, with truly evil people, we should be angry at them. We should be angry at, you know, people who I was just, there's lots of evil people out there to be angry at, but this is not most people. So the Talmud says that the anger is an agent of the Sitra Achra. Um, Sitra Achra means the other side, the demonic realm. And there's this force of evil in the universe. in the Bible, this force of evil is personified by a certain figure. Anybody know who that is? Who's the most evil person, even more evil than Pharaoh in the Bible?
Like,
So Amalek. Amalek is considered the embodiment of evil. Right? He attacks from behind, killing women and children. Right? Pure destructiveness. There's no strategy there. There's no military strategy. I'm just trying to kill as many people as I can. So Amalek is the force of evil. Inside our own psyche, the force of evil is called what?
yetzer hara.
The yetzer hara, the evil inclination. So yetzer is inclination, ra is evil. And the Tanakh says, yetzer leva adam ra min urav, that a person's inclination is evil from their youth, right? That when children are children, they push, they bite, they hit, they're just born. And it's not even necessarily, the yetzer hara isn't always just evil. It's also simply, what do I want, right? I see something, I want it. I worked with really not just mentally disabled, really mentally severely incapacitated children in Israel. And one kid we took to the zoo, and it was really very sad. He saw another child with an ice cream cone, and this kid was like at the status of an animal. I mean, he really had no mental capacity there. He sees this ice cream cone that someone else has, another child. He reaches out, grabs the thing, and it just crushes in his hand. The whole thing falls to the floor, right? It was purely like, I see ice cream, I want it. Purely animal instincts. So that's the yetzer hara. The Talmud says the yetzer hara is a foreign god inside. It can take us over inside and get us to do even self-destructive actions. Talishkin gives a couple examples. He says road rage is a factor in 28,000 highway deaths. Moses actually couldn't get into Israel because he got angry with the Jews. He called them rebels. So it causes us to be unhappy. It's self-destructive. So I'm going to share a screen and share what Maimonides has to say. So just to remind you guys, Rambam or Maimonides lived in the 12th century. He started out in Egypt, but he had to flee when the radical Muslims took over. The Almohades took over, and he fled to Egypt. He wrote two major works. One of them is called The Guide for the Perplexed, which is a philosophy, and one of them is called Mishnah Torah, and it's a book of halakha. And it's just very well written, very clear. So does somebody want to read this for me? Anyone want to read it?
Sure.
Thank you.
So too is anger an exceedingly bad quality, one from which it is proper that one distance himself to an extreme. A person should train himself not to anger even on a matter regarding which anger is appropriate. And if a person wants to instill awe upon his children, or if he is an administrator and wants to anger at the community members in order that they mend their ways, he should only feign anger in their presence in order to castigate them, but in his mind should be composed within. He should act as one impersonating an angry man while not being angry himself.
So, according to Rambam, are we ever allowed to get angry?
No, we're only supposed to pretend we're angry but not actually be angry.
Right. So according to Rambam, we're never allowed to be angry. We're only allowed to pretend to be angry. Has anyone here ever successfully pretended to be angry? I think it's really hard to do. It's very, very hard to do.
I do it with very small children, I guess, but that's it.
Right. Oh, you shouldn't do that. Yeah. That was very bad. But it's pretty obvious. None of us are very good at it. I'm not a very good actor. Okay. Keep going.
Therefore, the sages instruct us that one should distance himself from anger so much that one accustoms himself not to feel even things which would ordinarily incite one to anger. and this is the ideal path. It is further the way of the righteous that they are insulted, abused, aluvim, but do not insult back. They hear themselves being disgraced and do not respond. They act out of love and rejoice in suffering. Regarding them does the first state, and those that love him are as the emergence of the sun in its power. Judges 5:31.
So any comments on that? And he's drawing straight from the Talmud. He's not making it up. Any comments on that? Why do you think? So let's just think back to everybody to the last time you got angry, and thinking about what was the result of the anger?
I think often if you act in anger, you act without thinking first and you make the situation worse. So the outcome is actually worse than it was before you expressed your anger.
Right. And I think that's what the Talmud means when it says it's a foreign God inside of us, right? It's a God telling us what to do so that we don't think. Because our thinking is our neshama, right? That's where we think, is this good? Is this right? Is this smart? That's our neshama coming through. And when we just act out of anger without thinking, that's a foreign God that's taking over us. Yeah. And it can be very destructive. Right? Like those 28,000 deaths caused by road rage. Any other thoughts on the passage? On this idea that we shouldn't ever get angry?
Also, anger can block you from possible solutions to fix the problem that got you anger because you are blocked
Right.
by anger.
Right. Absolutely. Right. You're not thinking about solutions. You're just thinking about relieving your anger.
You're just making it bigger and overwhelming yourself instead of helping you.
Yeah. Just because it just makes it worse. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on the anger piece? Okay. Great. So I was just going to do a little bit of prayer, tefillah, and let's I'm talk about the barechu today. So let me share the whiteboard. So we said we said a couple times now, right? That in the morning prayers, um, the first major section of the morning prayers is what's the first morning section?
Birkat HaShachar.
Yeah, B'chol Shachar, which really has to do with prayers for our body, right? Prayers for our body. And then the second is what?
Sukkot Zimra.
Sugei Zimra. And Liliana and David, don't worry, like we just did these. Like, well, when it comes around again, you'll hit these. So don't worry that you don't know these yet, but this is just the structure. So this is songs, and these are kind of like waking up emotionally.
So the first prayer was for our body, and the second in English, how we say it?
These are not just prayers. These, I said, Pesukei de Zimra. And this is a whole section of the prayer book. I mean, this is like, 30 pages. This isn't just one prayer. I'm giving you just the whole overall structure. The third is Shema and its blessings. And the fourth is the Amidah. And then in a month or two, we'll talk about Shabbat, but this is like, if you're praying at home, if you're praying on a weekday, this is the structure. So after Pesukei de Zimra and Shema, there is, between a lot of the sections, what is there? So there's also Kaddish in between. So we have this Kaddish, this brief prayer that kind of makes a section break. That some people say it's like a booster rocket. It gets us up to the next spiritual level. So we have Kaddish in between, and then we have something called what else do we have before Shema? Does anybody know?
The blessings of the
Called
Shema. For that, we have a lot of
I'm
psalms.
saying before the blessings of the Shema, after Psukei de Zimra, after the Kaddish, right after the Kaddish. It's a very brief prayer called the barechu.
The barechu, yeah, of course.
That's the call to worship. So basically, at the barechu, we're going from praying individually to praying as a community. It brings us together as a community. Not dissimilar from in Muslim prayer, where the muezzin gets up on the top of their little tower, and they have a call to prayer. It's actually very, very similar. Right, and then we have the Shema, and then we have the Amidah. No, we don't have Kaddish, no Kaddish, because not supposed to make a break. And then we have Kaddish at the end. So today I want to look at the barechu. I know Liliana and David, you guys are completely new to this, so don't feel bad if you don't really understand the structure yet, because it'll come around again. Any questions about this before we look at the actual prayer? So this is the barechu. It's very brief, right? So the way it works is the reader says in Hebrew this thing that means praise the Lord, this who is to be blessed, and then the congregation says the next line, praise to the Lord, the source, eternal source of all blessing, and then the reader responds it again. So the way it works is everyone is standing, and then when the leader says the bar, and this is only done in a minyan, by the way. So one of the prayers is only done when there's 10 people. When the leader says it, they bow. So they say Baruch et Adonai Hamavorach. And then the second part, the second line, everyone responds and bows Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed. And then the leader does it again. Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed. And everyone sits down. Okay? So that's how the barechu works in the morning and the evening when we're in synagogue. Have you guys seen that? Participated in that? Okay. It occurs two other places. Two others? Oh no, one other place. Let's see if I remember. I think it was page 156. Here we go. When there's a Torah reading, we do what do anybody know what day we do? What days of the week we do Torah reading? What days?
On Saturdays.
Saturday. There's two other days as well.
Mondays and Thursdays, so we don't
Mondays
go
and
3
Thursdays.
days without reading Torah.
That's right. That's right. We don't go 3 days without studying Torah. Because what happens when we go 3 days without studying Torah? I think there was some 3 days after Mount Sinai. I think something happened 3 days after Mount Sinai. When they start to complain or something. So yeah, we're not supposed to go 3 days without Torah study. So with the Torah reading, at the Torah service, they take out the Torah, they say these prayers, they march around, and then they put the Torah down, and then for each aliyah, we have 7 aliyot on Shabbat, and weekday we have 3 different days, but a person comes up for the aliyah, they say this prayer, the same prayer, different melody, same prayer. Barechu Adonai Hamarach. Everybody repeats it after them, and then they repeat it, but this time it's sitting down. Any other question? Any questions about the barechu? It's pretty simple and short. Okay. So I think we're going to leave it there for today. For next week, okay. Next week, we're off, but we're meeting in 2 weeks. I'd like you to read the book of Esther, which is really not very long, because Purim is coming up. And shoot, sorry, I'm trying to find my, this keeps disappearing. Okay, so I'd like you to read the book of Esther for homework, and Greenberg chapter 20, which is all about Purim, and Talishkin 29 to 30. Okay. And have a great day, everyone. And for Purim, also like look around and find a Purim event you can participate in, because you definitely want to do Purim. Lily and David, if you guys are around, we're doing a Megillah reading here the 3rd. Okay. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
So next week there's no class?